All right, we are back. Diana is back for our Vlad and Diecast.
With a special treat.
With a special little graphic animation that we created specifically for our segments. Everybody loves our segments. I get a lot of Twitter traffic when we post them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to have our own special graphics
I know.
now.
These guys are saying we need like theme music and
maybe some champagne.
Corks popping.
Yeah.
So you've got a really interesting show tomorrow.
Yeah, we do, and we're actually looking at something that it's sort of for the men and the women out there, but we did a lot on Rent the Runway and a lot of different fashion startups that are giving women different options in terms of dressing. So we're taking a look tomorrow at one that's targeting men and people who might know about the all so difficult job of finding a tux when you need to rent a tux and getting a good fit and looking, wanting to look more like James Bond, less like Dumb and Dumber. So
nice.
these
or
two,
Pee Wee Herman.
Right, exactly. So these two friends actually started a company called the Black Tux to try and solve this problem and offer an alternative. So take a look at Carter Evans talking to one of the founders.
So it sounds like what you found is a niche in the market.
If you think about the tuxedo rental market, most people's initial reaction is like, I don't want to do that, or I'm not going to have a great experience. And this is a really large market. In some ways, it's just a market that needed to be transformed.
So a market that needed to be transformed.
Yeah.
And we were talking earlier, it's not just young dudes that are going to the prom that are looking for a tux.
No, it's actually a $1.2 billion industry every year, male formal wear rentals. So it's weddings, and obviously spring is a big time for weddings. So if you need, 12 tuxes that all match, they're saying their fit is better and their styles are better, and they're taking, sort of the big box rentals to the next level.
So you guys all own your own tux, right? Yeah. So I thought to myself, a lot of guys own their tuxes. Like I own a tux, these guys own a tux. But then I thought we're also in media.
And you're savvy.
Right.
Come on.
And we live in New York City.
You can't hold everybody to that standard.
Yes, I cannot hold everybody to the Vlad standard.
And they also do more than just tuxes, so they rent out suits as well. So for starting at $95, and Carter will obviously bring us more of this tomorrow, but you can get a suit. They send it to you in advance. You can fit it out, see if it works, and then if not, send it back for free.
It would be cool to have like a different tux,
just don't stain on it and you're fine.
Awesome. All right, and then this college story, college admissions, I'm really fascinated by that.
Yeah, so Frank Bruni of the New York Times has a book coming out. He's going to be live on our show tomorrow to talk about the college admissions process and why it doesn't really matter where you go to school as much as what you do when you're there. And he wrote about this in the New York Times. It's actually one of the most emailed articles on the site right now about how there's so much angst and so much stress when it comes to coming to the, getting into the Ivy League, getting into the elite schools, and that really sort of sets up, a kid's self-worth.
Right.
And he basically says that's a big misconception, and really we should be looking at other things.
I've talked to a lot of people who run these consulting companies that try to not game the system, but they find where the wiggle room is. A lot of schools say, your SATs have to be at this level and you have to have a certain GPA average before we'll even look at your application, but there are wiggle room areas, and these companies have figured out a way to exploit that to help these kids get in. But I know what you're saying, where people sometimes feel like they are not competitive if they're not able to go to an Ivy League school or an elite university.
Right, and he says, people don't necessarily thrive in those environments, and maybe if they go to a different school, they would totally take off and be the, on top of the heap, as opposed to feeling stressed at a school that might not be fit for them.
Right.
And sometimes smaller schools that are less of a brand tend to focus more on the learning, more on the actual outcome of the kids than, some of the bigger schools or some of the bigger names.
Right.
So,
I also feel like employers look at resumes of kids that come out of these schools. And yes, sometimes a resume will land on your desk of a kid who went to Harvard, but sometimes the employers are even harder on that applicant because they expect that you're going to be either a smart aleck or, have some kind of entitlement issues.
Chip on your shoulder.
Right.
And the CEOs of some of the top companies aren't from Ivy League schools necessarily, and that's also, in his book and in the article, that it's not just, it's not an elitist world out there if you're willing to do the work and you're willing to have a good attitude about it. And he'll talk about the admissions process tomorrow too, and how that's flawed as well. So.
What does he say? I'm just curious.
You're gonna have to watch.
All right.
I'm telling you everything,
so it's like,
Vlad.
I don't want to. I don't have kids. I'm just trying to learn something.
Yeah,
but I think it's
never
really.
for another
I know we
degree.
could do this segment forever because it's such a fascinating subject, and I think one that a lot of people in America and around the world care about. I mean,
Yeah,
you hear
and
about
it's so
people in
personal.
China paying millions of dollars to get their kids into Harvard.
Right, and is it worth the money? Is it going to pay off? And are we setting kids up, for success or for, for failure? So, yeah, it's really interesting.
I'll be in that green room when Frank Rooney shows up.
You can ask him.
Yeah, I know. All right, this was so much fun. Welcome back.
Thank
so
you.
Happy
Good
to
to be
have
back.
you.
Thanks for the graphic.
I know
This
we have
is
our little
awesome.
graphic going. We had to tweak it a little because they gave me Obama ears.
No, it's pretty good.
They look pretty good.